everyone. Thanks for joining our live session today. Excited to bring on Andy Ruz, Director of Information Security at Meriplex, and our guest speaker, again, Andy Crocker, Solutions Architect at Fortinet. I'm going to kick it off to Andres to start.
Thank you, Macy. Andy, great to see you. Brother, how are you?
Good to see you. It's great to be here and have this conversation with you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for calling me. So we have both black shirts. That was very smart, for the video. So we're on the same page. We don't have any problem
that
there.
Was the plan.
So thank you everyone, guys, for participating today. We have a very exciting event. We're going to go through FortiEDR demo with you, and let's get started. I'm going to do one slide on the product because I think it's very important to kind of put this demo in the context of what is FortiEDR. So from the evolution side, you all have been using probably a traditional AV, even a next generation AV. That's a very good job, very important job in securing your company. Now, when we go to the EDR side of the deal, this is a product that has been extremely popular due to ransomware. And I want to tell you why we select FortiEDR as a product that we use for all our customers to protect on that part of the pie. FortiEDR, first of all, has 9 patents that they register in the way that how they work to protect at the kernel level the processes that are executing from your computer side. And let me tell you why that's important. Because that is agnostic of what is the software that is running. It's going to ask questions about what is that process is going to try to do to better protect the results of that. And this is not only from an execution, but it's also from a communication perspective. So if you have a software that's trying to communicate with a C2 command and control center, or if you have a process from your company in your machine that is trying to do something like a ransom encrypt files, this product has been proved extremely efficient in controlling those 2 very important aspects. And this is not related to signatures. This is not as a traditional AV will work in hashing. They don't work in that way. They work and they ask questions about what the process is trying to do to prevent from your computer to pretty much get infected, getting into trouble. Now, from a response and automation, there's a lot of things that I can say, and I want to tell you a couple of things that for me are important. We provide the SOC services on top of the FortiEDR from the Meriplex side, but this is one of the products that let us sleep at night. Because again, if you get a malware, that 0-day malware, that there's no hash, there's no signature, what this product is going to do is going to put their arms around it and said, I'm sorry, but you cannot execute it because what you're trying to do is not aligned with the process that you should be running. And that's why FortiEDR has been extremely successful implementing this malware to execute or to communicate. One last thing, and then we're going to jump to the demo, is that the technology also allows you to do threat hunting. And a good chase can be with a Sunburst, or the Supernova malware after the SolarWinds. We use this tool to chase those hashes inside some of our customers' environment to validate that there was no presence of hash of those in the customers. Another example that I want to be given, this is the last one, Andy, then the demo is yours. We have a couple of customers who they are having a hard time to control some of the software deployed in the environment for multiple reasons. Mm-hmm. And we found some people, that they have TeamViewer in the organization. And I'm not saying that TeamViewer is bad, but they have not authorized TeamViewer. So what you can do with this software is you can prevent TeamViewer to connect. You cannot prevent it from executing, but you can prevent that actually to connect. And at the very end, prevent someone to use an unauthorized software in an unauthorized way. So this product is extremely efficient when we talk about controlling, but it also has very important security features like threat hunting and controlling this software and the visibility of the vulnerability on those softwares. So with that, Andy, I would love to start with the demo. So let's break some eggs.
You got it. So thanks, Andy, and you made a good point. And I want to illustrate that or emphasize that a little bit, Andy, because because you've been involved with this, we've had a number of instances where we've been on a customer premise and doing a proof of concept with the FortiEDR and actually found malware that was about to start an encryption process, and we were able to stop it. We've done that a number of times. So I want you to kind of think about that as we go through this. When Andy asked me about doing this demo, I thought, man, what a great way. It's one thing to show you PowerPoint slides. It's a totally different thing to actually see the interface and see what it does. Now, right now you see the dashboard, and I'm not going to stay here for just a second or two. I think one of the things that's important as we go into this demo is to understand kind of how we do what we do. Kind of what Andy is referring to a minute ago when he was talking about operating at the kernel level. Now, as I go into the security policies, I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about what it means to be at the kernel level. And I'm going to probably use a couple of phrases that you may or may not have heard before. So the first thing I want to mention here or show you is device control. Now, when I talk about device control, this is either on or off. That's really all it is. And as you see, I've got a few of these enabled, like, excuse me, an audio device. I'm just going to log it. But like a USB communications and CDC control device, I'm actually going to block that. You can pick and choose what you want. Now, most people that utilize the FortiEDR, they typically don't use this, but it is there. And it's one of those things that if somebody picks up a USB drive in a parking lot, which, by the way, that happens quite often, and they put it in their device, if you have this enabled, it's not going to be able to do anything. Period, end of story, especially if you have it blocked. So that's the importance of the device control. But that's not really what we're here to talk about.
Andy, let me ask you something about that before we jump to another subject. What happens if you have, maybe a group of people who, they need that, but then you have another group of people that they require this for business purposes? How you make the difference?
So basically, in that case, what you'd want to do is create a group or group of people, and I'll be able to show that a little bit because you're going to see that as we move into some of the playbooks, and that's where you would create, say, for instance, you would clone the device control policy and then call it engineering or call it accounting or call it whatever, right? And you could put those people in that so that in that scenario, you would actually have that rule that applied to only that group. That's a great question because that is something that you want to think about is, do I want to apply the same rules to everybody? And by the way, what I'm going to show you, and I appreciate you asking that, Andy, but one of the things I am going to, as we walk through this, the settings you're going to see are set on by default. These that you see enabled, I enabled this morning just because I wanted to show that you could actually turn it on. So like if I want to disable that, it's as simply as just disabling it. And again, you can do that on all of these. And you can create groups that would apply different rule sets to. Good question. So let's talk about pre-infection. Andy mentioned the next-gen antivirus. And he did mention, I want to make sure you caught what he said. This next-gen antivirus that we're utilizing is not based on signatures. That's an important point because most antiviruses are signature-based. This is not based on signatures. Number two, it is not based on behavior. The execution prevention, which is your pre-infection detection, is not based on signatures or behavior. As you see this list is here automatically. It's by default. And by default, as you see over here, it's enabled. Now, the sandbox is not enabled because in this particular demo environment, I don't have a sandbox set up, but you could. And that would be another great thing to do to have that capability. And Andy, that's one of the things maybe we need to talk about down the line as we have a session on sandboxing because I think it's so powerful in a lot of ways. But we'll leave that to the side. Keep in mind, this is algorithmic-based next-gen antivirus. We're looking at the various scenarios here and trying to determine, okay, what exactly is it? Like if I want to know more about this malicious file, I can actually go down here to the bottom and it gives me a description of what it's looking for. So you can get real granular, real detailed, which makes it really easy from that perspective. So that, again, that's pre-infection. Now, in the interest of time, I want to keep moving here because this is the one that everybody's worried about. Ransomware. Ransomware is where everybody is having issues. And I say everybody, and that I know it's a general rule or a general statement, but it seems like every day I hear of more people, another company being hit with ransomware. What does ransomware typically do? Well, ransomware typically goes into, it's a file or an email or something somebody gets on their desktop, and they open it up. When they open it up, it executes or sends an instruction, if you will, to the CPU. When it sends an instruction to the CPU, whatever that instruction is, it could be encrypt. It could be, as we'll talk about in a little bit, exfiltration, where I'm stealing data. It could be injecting processes or some kind of execution. Those instructions are what we're looking for. So as you look at this list, and by the way, these are all default, there's a whole list of stuff, injections, packers, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And when these things are executed, we see that. The FortiEDR can be called a firewall for the kernel. Now, somebody asked me recently, when you say a firewall kernel, or a firewall for the kernel, what do you mean? Well, again, it comes back to those instructions. We're looking at those instructions going to the CPU, and we're saying, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. That's not a normal instruction. If you're utilizing something, maybe you're creating a file, maybe you're copying a file, that instruction, unless you've made an exception for it, is going to be like, why are you copying that file? You shouldn't be. So we're going to stop it. Now, the point here is that as you see the action here on all of these is blocked, which means it will not work. If that instruction is to encrypt your hard drive, it will not encrypt it. It will actually stop it. Now, that also, and I'm going to show you in a little bit when we go to the playbooks, that you can actually remove that file. If you don't utilize the playbooks where it removes it, that file actually stays on that device. And it goes back to what Andy was saying. With FortiEDR, you can sleep at night. And the reason you can sleep at night is because you know that FortiEDR is looking at those instructions and it's stopping it. It will not allow those instructions to be executed if it is something that's going to be detrimental to your system or to your organization. I hope that kind of makes sense. So let's go a little deeper. What about exfiltration? Now, exfiltration, a lot of times, is where I'm going to capture your data. I want to grab some data, or I'm going to drop some malicious code inside of your system. There's all kinds of things. It could also include connecting to a command and control, which is actually also part of the ransomware. But as you see all these lists, all of them are enabled, and I'm blocking almost every one of them. Some of them I'm just logging because it's typically not going to infect your system or create a problem, but it is something we want to know about. So exfiltration, again, looking at the kernel level, looking at the instructions going to your CPU, and this is all post-infection. And really the concept that FortiEDR has is zero tolerance. And that's a phrase I want you to kind of remember, zero tolerance. We just assume everything is bad. We're looking at those instructions and we're going, oh, that's not normal. We're going to stop it. We're going to block it right there, and it won't go any further. And again, kind of like I showed you earlier, down here at the bottom of the page where it says advanced policy and rule data, anytime you want to know what some of these are, you just click on it. And down here under advanced policy and rule data, it's going to give you a good description of what that activity could have been, which is real helpful if you really want to kind of.
I like that you're explaining
Yes,
this.
sir.
Because some of the misunderstanding of the EDR concept in general is that everyone relates EDR to ransom, but they don't understand that all these things still can happen, right? Ransom is very normal use, we see it in the news very often, but data exfiltration is a serious problem, Data exfiltration is something that the companies have to realize from an intellectual property side, or from even stealing information from a PII or PHI side. Those things are things that a lot of companies today they have to protect and face. So EDR is not only for ransomware, but it's also protecting in these cases of type of attacks.
You are absolutely correct. Because, for instance, let's pick on healthcare. Patient records are still worth a lot of money. And there's a lot of cyber criminals out there that will capture that patient information and resell it on the dark web. Talk about, school systems, K-12s. Cyber criminals love to grab the social security number of those fourth graders and second graders, because they can hold on to that. They can turn around and resell that social security number and make good money. So yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Andy, and I agree with you 100%. When you think about EDR, it is not just for ransomware, it is for exfiltration, which, as you see, this list includes a lot of different things. And I mean, if we had time, we would go through a lot of these, but I want to get to show you some real stuff that actually we captured and we're able to show you. So let's do that now. Let's go over to the event viewer. So just to kind of give you a heads up, what we did is I worked with some of our EDR experts, and we actually released a bunch of this stuff the other day. So as you see, January 19th. I'm going to pick in this case for today, and let me scroll down and just kind of give you an idea. There's actually 37 different events that we release and then let FortiEDR catch it. The one I want to really show you is this server, which is one that has created a lot of problem in the industry. What I want to do specifically is kind of show you the path that it took. And I'm going to start down here at the bottom. So first of all, the first thing it did at 7:49:55 is it tried to go to two destinations. Now, if you'll notice over here on the right, you'll see the exfiltration data. Keep in mind, that's pre-infection, right? So there's your malicious runtime generated code, some process hollowing, and an unmapped executable. Now, even here, if I go down to advanced data, I can actually see kind of a path that it took. And if you'll notice over here to the far right, that's a CNC, and it gives you the IP address. Well, where is that? That's a good question. If I click on geolocation, it's in Spain. So right there, just in that first attempt, we already know exactly what was going on. Then if you'll notice, it tried to create a file, and then it was some services that it tried to access. Again, I want to learn, okay, what exactly was that? There was a process hollowing and the service that it tried to go into. And here is the actual hash, and you can see that it was terminated. So again, the point here is that I want you to see and really show you that what it was trying to do and the things that typically malware will do to your machine every time that it comes in. So there was a file deletion, and again, follow the timestamps over here on the side. There was a file write access that it was trying to do. There's another file creation, and again, you can see exactly what it was if you go down and click on that. Right here is the actual hash that it did. And then again, two more CNC attempts. And again, I know I keep saying this, but I think it's important to point out that, from the destination standpoint, I want to know what happened and where it went. And again, if I click on the geolocation, there it is, Spain, and there's the IP address. So in this case, you could actually, in your firewall, block that, put a block on that IP address. It tried it again just a little bit later, and then the file execution attempt, right? So if you follow this, and this is the kind of detail that FortiEDR is going to provide you. It's going to give you the specific ways and actions and activities that it was attempting to do. This is all within just a few minutes, as you see the timestamps. So again, the point here is that we can show you the full detail. And I wanted to, just because I can, one of the ones that people talk about all the time is Wannacry. Here's an example of Wannacry. And if you want to see the detail of what Wannacry wanted to do, you can actually do that from here. Malicious file, there was a read attempt. And again, I can go down to advanced data. I can see exactly what it was going on and the fact that it was blocked because we picked up a malicious file. And we have other ones in here that we have tested with and tried. Petya is on here, and there's Tesla. The point being is that especially our EDR systems engineers, they have access to a lot of these malicious files, and they run them in here. Okay, so that's an example and a demonstration of what happens. By the way, in case those of you who don't know, this pup that you see here in the middle is a potentially unwanted program. I actually had to look that up myself and understand more of what it was. So in this case, unconfirmed file detection, this was something that was not really wanted. In this case, we didn't stop it, we just logged it.
And
the point here, to Andy's point.
No, go ahead. So you bring
I was going to say the point. The biggest thing, like you pointed out a minute ago, Andy, is the exfiltration. There's more to malware than just the encryption of your hard drive.
Thank you for that. Now, let's say that we're running this, and for some point, you're checking, in the events, and suddenly you have a PUP or PUP. How you say that, PUP? I need to learn that, PUP. And then you're investigating this, and for some reason, this is not malicious, right? So this is something that makes sense. Is that easy? How you will say this is a good thing? Don't worry, we can make kind of this work and kind of notify your users that have been blocked from running that. How that works?
Good question. So let's pick on this one, this snake econs. If I wanted to make an exception, I can just click right here on this green button, and it's going to take me to an exception. Now, what's interesting about here, I can either choose specific groups, and as you see, I've already built a couple of groups: engineering, accounting, high security group, or I can change the destination. Say, for instance, I want to allow it to only go to AWS, or I only want it to go to Azure, or I only wanted to keep it inside my organization. I can make an exception for that and be able to keep that local. For instance, if I chose the internal destinations, right, that's the only place it's going to go. It won't be able to reach anywhere else. So that's an important point that you can get into. I also can go from right here right into the forensics on that and give me some more detail. There's the hash itself. So again, I'm learning more about what it is. And folks on the call, one of the things I would encourage you, and this is a problem across the board, there's not enough security-minded people or real security engineers, but this is a way you can take someone who knows a little bit and take them a lot deeper so that they learn a lot more about what's going on from that perspective. Does that make sense, Andy?
Yes. And from here, is there a way, I think it's important for you to show about how we sometimes validate those hashes against VirusTotal as an alternative way of doing that?
Yes. Well, the biggest ways is you utilizing the event viewer, finding something that was there, right? Doesn't matter what it is. Let's pick on Tesla that had 4 events, right? So I've clicked on Tesla. I can actually, if I open that and then I go right into forensics, or I go into the advanced data, and it's going to tell me all the details that I need to learn. I can understand what it was trying to do. I can understand the events that occurred, everything that it tried to, like the malicious files that were detected. That's where you're going to learn all of that. So that's one of them. As you see, there's multiples up here across the top that you're able to look at and drill into. So from an aspect of learning more about security and malware, this is the best way to do it. In the interest of time, let's talk real quickly about playbooks, because playbooks are an important thing. So when we talk about playbooks, what we're talking about, and this is the default setting. If you'll notice over here on the right at the top, it's got my verdicts, if you will: malicious, suspicious, potentially unwanted program, inconclusive, or safe. So in all of those cases, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, send an email notification. And of course, you set that up of where that goes. From there, you can make other choices. Like if you follow this all the way down, under malicious, I'm going to terminate the process. I can also choose to delete the file. And of course, I want to clean it up. This is where the automation comes in. From when an event occurs, what happens then? The playbooks are where you define that. Now, that's just a default. If I go to, say, for instance, my accounting, now, we like our accountants. We love our accountants. They're awesome people. But some of them can't even spell technology. So in those cases, guess what? Even if it's suspicious, I'm going to go ahead and isolate it. I might even go so far as to say, I'm going to isolate it if it's an unwanted program or potentially, and even inconclusive, because I want to be careful. And the same thing down here under remediation. What do I want to do? I want to terminate that process. And in their case, I'm probably going to go ahead and delete the file just because I want to make sure they're good. But again, that's accounting. What about engineering? Well, engineering is a whole different game because we trust our engineering staff. In that case, instead of isolating the device, we moved it to the high security group. So we put it in a place where we can do more investigation, more detailed forensics, and then of course I want to clean it up. Now notice I only did that on malicious. On the suspicious files, I'm probably going to leave it there because again, and I might even just move it to the high security group so I can go back and look at it in more depth. So the playbooks are where you decide once something has come into your system, what do I do with it at that point? That's the remediation piece. That's the follow-up from that perspective.
Perfect.
So we only have a couple minutes left. Andy, any question in your mind that we have not addressed so that our viewers and listeners can take advantage of?
I think one thing that I would like to mention, and then we're going to be out of time, so let's close, is the integration with the firewalls on the FortiGate side for the remediation process, right? So if you find a connection, you can do an integration both from the SIEM side, you can send syslog to your SIEM to better visibility, which we take advantage, and also the integration with your FortiGates to control some of those connections going out from the same place here, where it says block address on the firewall here. You can pretty much do that from the malicious suspicious connectivity. And those are remediation steps that you can take and get alerts in case that something else besides a device that's in FortiEDR is sending message that way from a command and control center.
Correct.
Okay, with that,
absolutely correct.
Let's close and let's go to our takeaway. So a couple of things for you guys to remember for today. The first one is going to be that this concept of that FortiEDR is the firewall at the kernel level, work at the kernel level. This is not the traditional AV with signatures. This is at the kernel level, watching every process. The second one is,
yes,
we need to remember that untrusted software in your environment is one of the most common ways that some type of malware, some type of command control will break in and pretty much be the starting point of something more serious going on. Andy, do you want to do that too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that both of those so far, and even number three is extremely important. Folks, when you get hit with an encryption and you have to pay a fee, just forget about how much it costs just to unlock your system. The downtime is extremely, extremely expensive. And when you compare that to the cost of protection on the front end, it's I'm going to use the word cheap because it is comparable. And then, yes, EDR is a must in today's security defense. No question about it. You got to have it. If you're not using an endpoint detection and response system today, you need to call Andy. You need to call him today because he can hook you up.
And I think with that, that's a good end. Thank you, Andy, so much for this great video, great demo on the FortiEDR. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating, and I hope that you have a great weekend. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.